Could I start off, Gwen, by asking you a little bit about growing up in South Wales? Like, obviously, the Garth Mountain points more or less to where you were growing up, but tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I grew up in Taffs Well, which I don't know if you know what Taffs Well is.
I know
It's sort
Taffs
of in
Well,
that,
yeah, very well,
that
yeah.
strange no man's land between Cardiff and the valleys. Yeah, just right on the right on the train tracks, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, and sort of just and again at the foot the Garth. I went to school in Well, the Garth and all that, So the Garth formed very heavy in my childhood, as it were. But yeah, grew up around there. I started playing guitar when I was about 8, and then I started playing in bands. Actually, it started on the drums in bands from about the age of 14, and kind of did a lot of playing. Yeah, I was just playing in sort of various punk bands really around the around the valleys. That was kind of my formative thing, was more punk and grunge before I sort of turned to the dark side of acoustic guitar. But yeah, it's been a lot, again, just, it's a standard around that sort of time, playing it was sort of back in the days when like TJs were still open in Newport. So it was kind of heavily in that whole sort of, that South Wales grunge punk scene.
So were there any bands that, I might know maybe, or?
It's very doubtful. I mean, I was playing a band. I think we had like a weird cult. I think not at the time. I think we have a weird cult following since. When I say cult, I mean it's as cult as you can get. Cult of about 3 people. Called the band called the Physicists. We played. I think Adam Walton, who's a DJ, used to like us. He played us a lot. It's a couple of sessions for BBC Radio Wales back in the day.
You should contact. Are you still in touch with Adam, by the way?
Oh yeah. Funnily enough, the bassist to our original bassist who sort of left the band after a sort of year or so, she ended up being a solo instrumental guitar player as well. It seems to have been a font for all of that. So that dirty noise did something interesting to everyone.
Yeah, I think I only went to TJ's a couple of times in its heyday, but it was very much. It was kind of the Newport thing, wasn't it? Really, the kind of Newport kind of punk sound, and isn't some of the bands had some success, but I think a lot more should have come through that.
Yeah, it's more of a scene, really, wasn't it, rather than sort of having specific bands.
Yeah, and like you said, quite a kind of microcosmic, kind of small but very lively and very specific kind of scene. Lots of feedback going on and all the rest of it.
Yeah, fully. That was good. I miss it.
Yeah, I wish I should have gone there more, because John Cicolo died a few years back. I guess you would have come across him, legendary for his hospitality.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, God, it's been so long. It was a long time ago, but I'm not sure how amenable we were to hospitality as young punks.
Yeah. Just come back. I want to come back to you on the punk stuff as well. That's really interesting. I was reading some stuff about you earlier. I love that idea of the Garth Mountain thing. Tell us a little bit, because my sister used to live in Taffs Well, so I live in Pontyclean, so I'm not very far away. I know Taffs Well quite well. And tell me a little bit about the Lights Over Garth Mountain and that that kind of idea, and what would those lights have been?
I mean, actually, the Lights is just a pretty straight story from memory from my childhood, which was being at home. I kind of grew up with a fascination with UFOs and stuff, and sort of still have it. It's kind of a strange, because my background is in astrophysics as a scientist, so it's kind of a strange dichotomy. Whereas I always had this opinion of never let the truth get in the way of a good story. So I've always had a good thing about UFOs. But I remember one time as a kid, just hanging out at home. I think my mum and my sister had gone down to the co-op to get some stuff. And they come back full of it, saying, "Oh, we just saw these lights floating over Garth Mountain. We saw a UFO." And I don't know, that stuck with me for some reason. And when I wrote that album, for whatever reason, it really reminded me of like, of home, of like the Garth and that place, and the kind of the forests and all the sort of nature around there, and something about the atmosphere of the place. And I was kind of the sort of strangeness of it all. And I was trying to think of basically what shall I call this album, and then that memory came to me. I was like, oh man, absolutely, that memory is exactly what I think I'm thinking about with a lot of these songs, is that kind of distillation of strange childhood, sort of vaguely esoteric memory.
Yeah. Now I think, if I remember, over the years, I remember people saying, you know, you should, for example, when there's kind of stuff happening in the sky, you know, go and sit on Garth Mountain, you know, because you're going to see it. And I think there was, you know, all kinds of rumors about stuff that happened
Oh
up
yeah.
on Garth Mountain. How much
Well,
of
it
it was
was.
true, I don't know.
Well, I mean, wasn't it like, isn't it infamous for magic mushrooms growing there?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
And
and
yeah,
there is a military base there. I mean, that's
yeah,
the party pooper in me telling everyone there is a military base. I remember seeing helicopters doing maneuvers in the
yeah.
daylight, but it's still
Maybe,
fun.
maybe not the best, maybe not the best choice. You said you got into music at 8. Were there sort of family influences, musicians in the family, or at all?
Yeah, I mean, sort of. Well, my uncle is a great guitar player. He used to play with like he still does play like Geraint Jarman and people like that.
Mm.
But I mean, mostly it was just sort of great. There was just a great interest in music in my family. Just a lot of music around the house. I mean, I started playing the guitar because I still had no interest in music at all, but I had a little Walkman, and my mum bought me a copy of Nirvana's Nevermind when I was about eight years old, and that was kind of that was a very very important moment because it was basically the first time I heard anything that I liked. So I used to run around I remember, running around the house, up and down the stairs with my headphones on, like just playing the album over and over and over again. I was proper, like, always a proper little hyperactive kid as well. And that year, I just sort of begged if I could have a guitar for Christmas, which I did, and that was the beginning of the end.
Well, I mean, with that, I mean, your guitar playing is just phenomenal. You know, it's just incredible. Having never seen or heard your stuff before, honestly, and I'm not, it blew my mind. I couldn't believe it. And the physicality and the kind of the dynamics within your playing, is kind of like a visceral energy to the way you play. Is that the kind of punk in you coming through? Even though for those people who may not have heard your stuff. I mean, for me, you're a virtuoso guitar player. It's just exemplary, beautiful playing, but very, very physical.
Yeah, I think certainly there's definitely that punk. I have very little interest in another. There's room for it in the world. I know it, but like obviously a lot of sort of solo guitar is quite pretty. It's kind of more bucolic kind of pastoral sound.
Mm.
Which is fine, and there's some nice playing like that. But for me, from that punk background, I just kind of like that drama and racket and noise, and I feel like that. Yeah, I kind of like that visceral quality.
Yeah.
So I just think to me that's what I like to hear. So it's what I like to play. Basically, it's just I think fundamentally actually my taste in music have not changed really. I've always basically like the same thing. It's just you're discovering more of that thing that you like in different styles of music.
I mean, what you're doing is, for me, it seems like the music industry is a tough industry. It's a hard industry, whether you're writing fairly mainstream pop stuff or trying to get into the industry or whatever. You're coming from a real kind of left of center perspective on this. I mean, was it quite difficult? Do you remember it being difficult in the early days, sort of trying to get gigs and get make your mark?
Yeah, no, it was I think anyone who's played music knows it's basically almost impossible. I mean, for me, so I kind of started. Obviously, I was playing sort of little shows, punk bands and stuff, and then I started playing this style. I started playing in folk bands because I could play the banjo and the lap steel and things like that, and I started doing this sort of backing musician thing in various folk outfits. And I started open gigs for those bands, or like just do a lot of like open mics. And to be honest, that is brutal. Like it's probably one of those brutal experiences you can go through as a musician because just no one cares. Like no one ever cares in those shows. But luckily for me, I think I had a couple of people care. Not many, but in fact the thing that happened to me was there's a fella in Brighton actually. He's a good mate of mine. He lives around the corner from me. So we are the Brighton 7 Dials American primitive scene. But yeah, he came to a few of my shows and like he liked it. And when I put out this what I called the bathroom tapes, like the basement tapes, the bathroom tapes of a bunch of songs I'd recorded in my bathroom. He sent them to Jeff Davidson, who's a DJ for WFMU in New Jersey, who liked them. And he sent them, and then yes, Jeff Davidson sent them over to Josh at Tompkins Square. Tompkins Square is kind of like the preeminent probably Guitar Sol, the American primitive label. They put out a lot of really important stuff. You got all the imaginational anthems and all that stuff came out on Tompkins Square, and the old Dale Bachman got started on Tompkins Square. And yeah, and I didn't know any of this was going on, and I was just playing these shows. And I remember distinctly because I was playing this sort of, it was like either an open mic or like one of those, basically an open mic show. And there's absolutely no one there, no one giving a toss, proper like desolate. And you got to play for yourself, right? It's super important to play for yourself. But I think if anyone denies that it's kind of a bummer when no one cares, they're sort of lying. It's yes. You can take, it's just the way it is, right? Everyone's sort of human. And I was like, fuck this, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm like sick of it. Like, what's the point? No one cares. I was just entertaining myself, And then when I was thinking that, the back of the room, being the bright miserable bugger, I had an email from Josh at Tompkins Square saying, I like your stuff, do you fancy putting an album out? It was crazy. Wow. And then from there, because that's it is quite a prestigious label for that scene. Everything, and then I started to get good gigs and festivals and stuff, and that's kind of how it went, really. Just blind luck as much as anything else.
I was looking at the gigs you're playing now, and I said, just when we were chatting beforehand, I asked if you were on tour, so you kind of pretty well always on tour, and you dive off all over the place. But I noticed a lot of them are sellouts, so.
Well, those sellouts will be the Riley Walker shows. I don't necessarily sell out so much not as well as Riley Walker, wasn't at the Tompkins Square alumni. Riley's a great American musician. I'm about to ship off on tour with him around his sort of UK and Ireland dates, and that's gonna be really fun. He actually, he's younger than me, but he sort of predates me in the Tompkins Square arena. He started off as a solo guitar player, putting out stuff on Tompkins Square, and then he's sort of expanded since. Now he's like a full-on singer-songwriter with a band and everything. He's sort of again on constant tour. He's great. He's an amazing musician.
I mean, I play guitar. I got guitars behind me, and I'm talking to you. I don't play guitar. I got a wooden thing that I hit. But I kind of think I kind of play guitar. But what you said just now about just having one person, you just happen to have that a moment is. And also with the stuff that you do, for me, it's just really reassuring that people are picking up on people like you, because there's so much talent out there, which is just like never noticed. And I start to think sometimes is musicianship, is it even a thing anymore? Do people even care about musicianship?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, to be honest, to me, like the most important thing is composition rather than musicianship. Musicianship's like a tool, right? So you can it allows you to play what you want to play, but ultimately if what you want to play is rubbish, it's not. You can be the greatest guitar player of all time and it wouldn't really matter. And like a lot of my favorite guitar players aren't the flashiest players, they're like usually it's all about composition, but that's the important thing. I mean, it's about exposure, isn't it? Like if you're sort of generally, I think to a lot of people, music is just something you put on in the background, and that's fair, right? Not everyone has to have the same interests. So that's kind of what you get, this sort of middle of the road stuff, because it's kind of innocuous and inoffensive. Well, to some people, I find it extremely offensive, but that's just my bad attitude. But to general people, whatever. It's just like elevator music.
Yeah,
as its form. But I think if people are generally interested in music, if you kind of give them something that's interesting, they like it, right? Or they're interested in it, they want to hear more of it. And and everyone's sort of in their own genre, their own niche and their own genre. And I think to a certain extent, it's kind of, everyone thinks that the genre that they like is the best, but it's great. I like to try and listen to like really different stuff just to get my head around it. And sometimes I don't get it. Sometimes I got some associates who are like heavily into this sort of EDM stuff, and I'm always trying to go, all right, can you explain this to me? And I don't get it, but it's fine. It doesn't mean it's bad. I just don't get it. It doesn't pull me in the same way. But ultimately, it's just about, I think you just have to be, and if anyone's making something in an uncynical way that they genuinely love, then that's the important thing, right? It's not about musicianship. It's about doing that thing, expressing yourself in some way. Because a lot of great music, doesn't even have instruments these days. Yeah, with the sort of electronic music, it's all. I can't do that. It blows my mind. Those DJs who can write a really interesting piece of music and they're not playing it. They're thinking about it and they're programming it into a computer. I can't do that. I have to play an instrument to hear it, to be able to realize it. But some people, it's like they hear it in their head and they can just program it. It's like an old, I guess it's kind of like a really old-fashioned way in a sense, right? When a classical composer making a a thing for like a however many piece orchestra. I don't know.
But I noticed you were talking about one of your albums, and you were saying it was more compositional. So so you very much come from a composer perspective in that way. And I was interested as well in terms of sort of the ideas behind the pieces of music, because they're pieces of music, right? And I do I don't know, do I need to know what they're about? Obviously you need to know what they're about. In your head you're talking about, we're talking about things like gothic stuff, Dead Men and all that kind of spiritual stuff. When you're writing a piece of music, where do your ideas come from, and how do you represent those ideas, do you think, through what you play? If that matters.
It doesn't. Yeah, it does. I don't know. It does matter, but it does matter. It doesn't matter because honestly, I think there are a few exceptions. For the most part, I am not composing around a topic. Just kind of, it's like because I think that's kind of one of the strengths of instrumental music, is this ability to kind of express things that are somewhat more inarticulable or sort of transient or ineffable, or we higgledy-piggledy, such as vibes,
yeah.
So I think in some sense, it's one of the things that's very difficult to talk about, because kind of what is good, what the strength of this this sort of instrumental music is that it is able to give form to something that's very hard to put in a sentence. So therefore, when you try and decompose it into a sentence, discuss the meaning of the song, it's kind of it doesn't really quite work out. I think it's something that, and typically things like coming up with titles, right? That's usually way after the point where I've gone, well, what is this song about? I don't know what this song's about. So I'm doing the same thing as you. I'm listening to a piece of music that I've written and go, what the fuck is this song about? I don't know. And then maybe it's this. I kind of, you kind of pull it together and you go, I think maybe I was thinking about this at the time, and it kind of reminds me of this thing that happened to me. And presumably, that is what happened. It is. But it wasn't a conscious decision at the time, or maybe it's not. Who knows?
But then I suppose you got, I suppose in a way, the title is kind of useful because it sets up the imagery in other people's minds, so it's sort of convenient. And I was looking at a couple of your videos. How the hell do you come up with those ideas for guitar instrumentals? The one with the kind of like the mannequins and all the rest of it,
Oh, the videos. That's my mom. I go, Mum, I need a music video. My mother was a film director.
Oh really?
She did
wow, okay.
Films, down in the. She did run. She sort of co-ran a all women's film production studio in the valleys and sort of in Pontypridd during the sort of 80s, 90s, called Red Flannel. They put out a bunch of women's subjects, documentary films. Like Mam, I think, is the most famous one they put out. Consequently, and after that, she sort of taught film in a youth center and things like that. So and did lots of music videos for the kids. So consequently, I'm like, Mum, help. And also with the second video, I had a lot of help from my brother, who was also makes part of his living doing music videos. It's great. We don't have to pay anyone.
But they must say to you, "Come on, Gwen, what is this about?"
Nope.
Essentially, no.
No, absolutely not. You listen to this, you think whatever it is you think it's about, that's what it's about. Just come up with the imagery to go with the music, because that's what we do, right? You come up with music to go with imagery, you come up with imagery to go with music. That's kind of, I used to think about imagery of music all the time when I was listening to tracks when I was younger. I don't know.
But it's sort of connected. But last night, my daughter, she was 19, and my youngest daughter was 19 on Saturday. So she was in here last night, and I was playing her some of my songs, right? Because the lyrics relate to people she might know, right? And so she said, "Oh, this about this and this about that." I said, "Well, it could, that could be the case, but isn't it interesting, Gwen? I'll say to you, isn't it interesting with sometimes even quite well-known songs and quite well-known artists and more mainstream stuff, how often, you know, music journalists interpret the song, say this is what it's about and la la la. May be the case, may not be the case. You know, it's kind of interesting, isn't it, how we interpret music and what it means.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, because it's personal, right? Music's super personal. Like, it's not if you know it's about so and so's third ex-wife and how they had to divide, you know, the cutlery and the divorce, then it kind of makes it a little bit less, you know, it's personal.
Yeah.
Really, it's even with lyrics, you know, I think it's mostly there to resonate. You know, you only really feel it if it resonates with your own experience, right? You don't lyrical music is if it's about some abstract concept that you don't really get, it's never going to be as compelling to you. It's all about, ultimately, music's quite selfish. It's all about you, the listener. It's, you know, what's it called, solipsistic. Yeah. And that's, I feel like, yeah, all art is all art is formed in the mind of the observer, right? That's kind of the only power it really has. The artists, it's an unintellectual thing, right? I mean, art effectively, or can be, certainly music.
Yeah,
it's not like writing or something.
No, and it is a bit, I can't remember, there's I should remember, but there's a word for it where the art takes on a different meaning when it's in front of an audience, and it's the connection between the interpretation of the stuff and the stuff, which is where the magic is, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's kind of that sort of that energy, you know, between the sort of, and then I think there's something about to do with, you know, energy fill, you know, sound filling room is a thing versus sound filling ear. I think that's a whole. It's not necessarily a shared experience, but it can be. Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things that's very. Again, it's kind of it's like a sort of. It's a oogie kind of concept. It's, you know, it's I don't want to call it spiritual because I hate that crap, but it's got something, you know,
There's
has
nothing wrong with
something
that.
to it. Yeah, it has something.
Yeah.
There's something there.
I mean, when you're touring, do you, you know, sort of between the songs, do you sort of introduce them and say this is large, you know, here's
No.
one that you just bash them out, yeah?
Yeah, I don't talk. I don't like talking in between songs. Because that's things I don't like it because I think like just what I think the song's about doesn't matter. It's what you think the song's about. And also again with I mean, it varies, right? There are certain, you know, there's certain songwriters who have very lyrical songs, and they can be nice to hear, like, you know, anecdotes in between the tunes. But someone like where I do, where I'm trying to go for more of this sort of, you know, this sort of mood, and it's all about kind of creating like an atmosphere, kind of ruining the entire ambiance. It's supposed to be like a sort of meditative, or not meditative, but like a, you know, an immersive experience.
Yeah.
You know, I'm also really bad at it, so it's a good excuse to not have to talk.
Well, you're a good interview, so that's something. But you know, the guitarists that you look up to be honest with you, I may not even have heard of some of them, but I know there are some that you kind of particularly nod towards. Did you want to maybe name check a couple of people that maybe people should check out if they haven't heard them?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, you have to go for like the sort of the godfather of American primitive guitar solo, which is John Fay. I mean, he's I think it becomes a contentious issue because you know, not everyone likes John Fay, and now they feel like, I think some people don't like the fact that if you're a solo guitar player vaguely in this style, then people will talk to you about John Fay, who had some, you know, personal issues and wasn't, you know, was kind of an interesting character, not necessarily always the nicest character, but I find him compelling. But like, I feel like his strange character that I understand him to have really comes out in his music. It's one of those guitar players where I feel like he really was, like, I really did get a sense of a person and all of like the uncomfortableness of that and the kind of the strangeness. He's almost kind of like out and out. It's almost outside of music in a sense, from John Fay. And I think, and with him, it's like interesting because you know, I'm not a great fan of that kind of pretty pastoral guitar playing, and he's guilty of that sometimes. But even when he does that, like, he does a version of like a Bicycle Made for Two, which is just unsettling, and it's not, who knows why, you know, it's something about its playing, and it comes through. So I'm a huge, obviously a huge John Fay fan. I mean, I like a lot of blues players. I'm a big. I mean, my sort of first country alternating thumb love was John Hurt, Mississippi John Hurt, because he was the first time I learned to play in that sort of alternating thumb style, because I was sort of completely convinced that there was two guitars on the track, and there's not. It's just one guitar, and he's just a great. It's kind of like a kind of more ragtime than anything else. But he's a great, one of the great pickers. And then I mean, Skip James, because no one sounds like Skip James. He's just got a completely unique. That's composition, man. His compositions just like beautiful. Like it's just like really haunting and like strange. They don't sound like what I find interesting is that I like pre-war blues music, and I think if someone's not familiar with that genre, with that era, they think they know what blues music is. They think it's like Chicago 50s, 60s stuff. Yeah. And like you're playing with Skip James, which couldn't sound less like that style unimaginable. And that's like this is the 20s, 30s. This is pre-war stuff. I think guys I love probably these days like my favorite, and I've talked about not being so into great showy guitar, and he is totally great showy guitar. I love Blind Boy Fuller. I love all his stupid little tricks that he puts in. Like it's just great. It's just like really entertaining guitar player. But yeah, so like that stuff. And then I don't know, like Joe Santiago from the Pixies. I think he's probably one of the greatest rock guitarists of all time in kind of complete minimalism. Yeah. Just like doesn't play many notes, but every single one he plays is the right note.
I wish I could say that, but never mind. Do you if you don't mind me asking you, have you ever sort of come across anything in your career sort of from male perspective, not being respected enough as a female musician, or any kind of tricky stuff like that, or has it just not occurred, luckily for you?
So I haven't really. It's kind of interesting because my whole life I've worked in quite male dominated fields, into my day job as well. So I work in video games and programming, and I've never I think I might just be blind because I should have experienced all the various things that I do. And I always hear lots of like, and I completely believe lots of horror stories. But never really had anything that bad. Well, you have like kind of weird dudes sometimes, but that's kind of a separate problem to being like talked down to. I mean, I remember being in punk bands, having a sort of slightly rubbish sound guy is trying to tell you how to do your amp, but that's kind of a separate issue. Not really. I don't know. I think either I've been lucky or I'm too pig-headed to notice.
Either case is quite good news. So that's.
Well, it's difficult though, because I don't disbelieve for a second. Anyone who says I can, and I've had lots of in different fields. There are lots of female friends in my day job field who have had real problems, so I know it's definitely there. But me, I think I'm just a bit pig-headed, which is I think it's probably good to be pig-headed. But that's not to say that you should have to be, and it's not fair that everyone has to be as not paying attention as me. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, you shouldn't need to, but maybe think a little bit about like Bonnie Raitt. People, if we're sitting around in a pub and talking about guitarists, you talk about all the, Jeff Black, Clapton, all these kind of guys, and something like Bonnie Raitt is, stunning musician. It just seems to be, I don't know what it is. It's just in the consciousness, maybe because we're all blokes and we can't help ourselves. But
it's a great. It might be completely nonsense, but it's a great. Speaking of sort of female guitar players, I do love. There's a great story of Memphis Minnie in a guitar duel with Big Bill Broonzy in some bar in the deep south, during whatever it was. Sort of first half of the 20th century in America, and them having a guitar duel, and her beating him so bad in said guitar duel that he hid under a table for the rest of the night. And he stole the prize, which was a bottle of gin, and he hid under the. It's probably complete nonsense, but I like that story. I choose to believe that.
It should be
like
true.
UFOs. Yeah,
it deserves to be true, doesn't it? What can you remember? Well, I don't know whether this is the case. When you had your first guitar, right? You said it was a Christmas present. Did you ever sort of buy any guitars from Cardiff music stores? You got any kind of memories of that kind of thing? Gamblings, these kind of places?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, but I think I bought guitars in every guitar shop in Cardiff. I think my first guitar, I think it was Cranes. Do you remember Cranes?
Yeah, I know Cranes. Yeah.
I think I tried that. I tried ones at Cranes, and I tried some at GM Music. And but yeah, I think I got that guitar from Cranes. I got a lot of guitars from Cranes. Cranes had some decent stuff. They had their own brand for a while. That was probably Chinese builds, but they were some pretty they were pretty
The
nice.
Hudson guitars, weren't they?
Hudsons were okay.
Yeah.
My mom's got I've got a Hudson in my mom's house. That we bought from like Cash Generator for 50 quid. And it's bloody good guitar. It's good guitar for 50 quid.
Yeah.
I tell you, they were all right, those Hudsons.
They've gone now. Cranes, as you probably know. Do you know that?
Yeah.
Cranes? Yeah.
That was a long time ago that they went, right?
Gamblings are still hanging in there, which is nice.
Yeah.
What would you? I suppose you can have. I don't know. Do you have like endorsements with guitars or?
No.
No. Is it?
No.
What, do you have like a dream guitar if you could play one, or are you already playing it?
Oh, I already play my dream guitar, which I have at Waterloo. I have Waterloo WL14L. Waterloo is like a sister company to I don't know if you know Collings guitars.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just like a sister company. They make basically pre-war style builds. So they've kind of got that small body, like big tone. Because I like vintage guitars generally. But when it comes to touring, I'm a bit terrified of smashing them into 1,000 pieces. And obviously, when your guitar's 100 years old, it's a bit more like destroying history than like my very lovely Waterloo, which I love. It's from 2020 or something. It's not like I'm wrecking a bit of history if I destroy it in an airplane. But it's a great guitar. I really lucky to find it. They're really hard to find in the UK, especially. They're made in Austin.
Okay.
I just got lucky. I just looked at the right website at the right time.
Yeah.
Managed to get it.
I'd not heard of Waterloo, so I'm making mental notes for this interview, things I've got to do later, including listening to musicians and all kinds of stuff. The other thing which is interesting about you, I don't know, I guess you use a whole bunch of tunings. Do you? Is there a particular tuning you tend to use more, or the most?
Yeah, I use a lot of tunings. I mean, I think my favorite is C minor. I tend to go for minor tunings because of the miserable goth thing. But yeah, it's just, I think there's like a lot of D, G, and C, which are the obvious ones, and the minors thereof. But I like C a lot. It's like nice and deep, and it's kind of got like a westerny vibe, I think, to a certain extent, which I quite enjoy playing. But I like I'm like making up tunings as well. So I've got some tunings on that second album that I don't know what they are.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. There we go. That's tuning. And they can be cool. That can be cool because tuners, like, they kind of want to, they kind of write songs themselves to a certain extent, right? Because you can play the same song and the same notes in two different tunings. Like, it's the same notes but in a different tuning, and it sounds different because of the you get that sympathetic resonance on the strings, which is one of the reasons to play in open tunings as much as anything else, as well as the ease of doing your drones. But yeah, I think it's fun to try new tunings. Everyone should try different tunings because you'll probably write a new song.
Did you listen much to Nick Drake at all?
I'm not the big. Everyone always asks about Nick Drake. I'm actually not the biggest. I'm actually not the biggest Nick Drake fan, but yeah, I know he's got some interesting tunings. He's okay.
I really like him, but he's not for everyone. But it's just I understand that he just kind of basically experimented with strings and just and then that makes a nice noise and probably didn't even know what the chords were.
Oh yeah, sometimes. Totally. Yeah. I think most people proper full on sort of that style of guitar playing they like to. My buddy Simon, who I mentioned before, his tuning madness is all over the place. He's got those spider capos as well, which is the capo when you can capo individual strings. It's got basically
never heard of that.
Yeah, it's basically got 6 little switches.
Wow.
So you can he'll like make a web of them on his guitar, so the guitar is the most ridiculous tuning, so yeah, there's definitely a lot of that going on. I mean, sometimes I think it can get in the way of writing a song. It's sort of like
you take it too far, probably
messing with your presets and your VSTs. Like, come on, write a song. But
I mean, I use a capo and dadgad and whatever, but I don't, I get a bit confused. But I do like some of the Nick Drake tunings. There are some beautiful tunings.
Yeah.
What would you say? Because I mean, you're living in Brighton now, which is a nice place, by the way, for my memory. What's your kind of favorite? Have you have you got a favorite gig, stroke location, somewhere you thought, oh man, this is just amazing. This is, you know, I mean, we must have loads, but I just wonder, does any spring to mind? Should go all over the
I
place.
mean, it is loads because I have been like all over, you know. I mean, it's nice to play new places. I mean, you know, I played some great festivals. I played like played a festival on the island of Madeira. That was pretty great, but that was mostly because I got to be in Madeira for 3 days.
Yeah, nice.
Just
Yeah.
like hang out in a hotel that was far too posh for me. But I mean, I don't. Yeah, I remember playing. So my favorite gigs are typically ones where where I get into it as much as anything else, as you might expect, which is less to do with anything as much as just to do with like the quality of sound on stage. Like I've got a big thing on monitors. I like to like hear it back really clearly, because then it sort of pulls you in as well as it's hard to, because sometimes when you're on stage, you know, it's a big open space, and if the monitors aren't great, and you know, and it's like got a lot, and there's people in the crowd who are absorbing the sound, it can be quite hard to hear yourself in any sort of immersive way. So venues which have got really nice on stage PAs have always been some of the best shows for me. So like stuff like Cafe Oto is a great. That was a great gig actually. I played Cafe Oto in London like a couple of months ago. And that was a sold out show, which was really nice because Cafe Oto is pretty much the coolest place to play in London. And really nice people there as well. It's a super cool venue. Put on really good stuff, and they've got the best monitors in the bloody world there as well. They're amazing. It's so clear. I had a very long conversation with the sound engineer about these monitors. What the fuck are these? They're amazing. And yeah, that was great. I played like another gig in London, like London Jazz. That was a great show, like a great audience, great sound. That's kind of what I like, you know.
Do you still make the effort when you turn up a gig and you don't know the sound guy? Do you still make the effort to sort of, you know, being friendly and, you know, getting them on side sort of thing and explaining what you want?
Yeah, I mean, like, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, people don't, do they? You know, even sort of, you know, up and coming unknown bands, they seem to think, oh, it's only the sound guy. I just think it's really important to get that relationship, you know, with them.
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing to do with being the sound guy.
Be polite to everyone, yeah.
Be nice to people.
But he's doing your sound, isn't he? So you know,
yeah, you know, we'll do his job. Hopefully,
or she, you know, to get a good sound. Well, just a couple of other things I wanted to ask you about. One of which I hope you'll like, but I noticed you were talking about, you know, the American primitive, and that's kind of a lot of what you're about within your psyche. And then you alluded to the fact, and I hope you're going to do this one day, you wanted to do the Welsh primitive. So I wondered what that might be about and how that links up with what you're describing as Welsh folk horror. You know, what's that kind of quintessential Welshness within that, I wonder.
I kind of think I already did it. I kind of, to me, like Strange Lights is Welsh, not American, and I think that is in that kind of slightly. I think like Welsh. I don't know. Welshness to me is quite. It's quite what's the word? There's a certain. I don't know. We're an odd bunch, you know. There's some sort of strangeness to the Welsh character, possibly due to like various English efforts to destroy the culture, and we've come out of it kind of a vaguely peculiar group of people. And I think there's a sort of dark humor to Wales, and there's a certain appreciation for a good story and a certain kind of vision, and for you know, I think a lot of British folk in general is very folk horror-y, right? It's lots of stories of tricking the devil and things like that. So I feel like that kind of slightly, you know, maybe slightly left field and gothy vibe that I think some of the tracks in Strange Lights have. To me, that's what I don't know. That's what Welsh just feels like in my head, certainly. I'm going to continue doing that.
You don't need a Welsh primitive. It's done. Yeah.
I amended it. No, I amended it. Don't worry about it. No, I think still I do like that. I don't want to pursue that because I've heard some stuff recently of like, I don't know, like I was hearing like people were calling Welsh folk music, and it was fucking Irish. Like and I love Irish music, but it was Irish music. That's what you play, and it's not Welsh. I mean, it's actually really interesting. I watched a thing the other day on talking about like what is Welsh folk music, and it's quite difficult because a lot of it's been lost, and that's again largely due to the efforts of England. And then I started to hear some pieces that had sort of they think were probably pretty old pieces of Welsh folk music, and it's really interesting because it is it has that Celtic, that Irish or Scottish sort of kind of scaling to it, except they've got these extra, I think they were like extra sevenths or something, which kind of gives it this slightly more, almost like a classical, like, I don't know, Baroque or something vibe. They really, to me, it comes off as a slightly goth and weird. And I thought that was after I'd recorded that album. So I thought that was interesting to me. Like, oh, that isn't a million miles away from the stuff that is apparently, Welsh folk songs which have survived. Yeah, I don't know. I think, but I want to continue at it. I think. I mean, I'm Welsh. I'm playing guitar, so inevitably it's Welsh music.
Yeah. It's like we were talking about earlier, really. About what's the tune about? What's the song about? A little bit of kind of mystery and indefinable suggested essence. Is sort of quite magical, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit. As I say, it's a mystery to me to a certain extent. You're just trying to pull something out of the air. It's like a thing that I don't know if you ever write a song, right? You just sort of discover a song that already existed. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I write songs, but I don't have success with my songs. But there we go. So I wanted to ask you firstly about you're playing the Richard Burton Theatre at the Welsh College of Music and Drama, October the 6th, which is a lovely place. Have you got a link with? Did you study there in years gone by at all? Or?
No. I mean, I studied in Cardiff, but I did astrophysics. No, I never. I'm completely. I am in fact completely primitive. I don't have any music education. I can't read music. I don't know. I don't understand any theory. So I don't think I've ever even been to the Royal Welsh College. I had a friend that went there. That's about it, though.
That's the best comment you've said in the whole thing. I absolutely love that. I love the fact. I mean, I assumed you were, studying, music theory expert, but it's just through you that stuff comes from you, which I really like that, because I can't read music to save my life, but.
I'm sure there's some old like Appalachian fiddle player who says something along the lines of, I can read music a little bit, but not so much that it hurts my playing.
Yeah, that's a good quote.
Yeah.
Would you have I suppose a final question for you, really, would you have advice for people going into music, or people playing guitar, or general advice for intermediate sort of guitarists who think maybe they're thinking about giving up, they can't quite get there? Have you got any kind of exercises you'd recommend, or mind thinking style?
I mean, well, I guess from a technical perspective, I think the only way to if there's a certain technique that you want to learn, right, the only way you're going to learn it is through absolute repetition, because typically, right, you don't want to be thinking about what you're playing when you're playing it. You want it to be an automatic motion, so the only way to do that is repetition. And I mean, I genuinely learned. I always watched Netflix for years, and I just sat there and I just played guitar constantly, just rocking my thumb, and that's how you get, that's for an alternating thumb. That's how you do it, because you don't want to think about it. You don't want to. It wants to be a completely autonomous. You want your hands to be completely autonomous from your brain, really. And yeah, but also there's a certain amount of. I'm really bad at learning other people's songs personally. I just can't remember them. So I would always just get learn like 2 bars or 3 bars that had the thing that I thought was cool, which is typically a technique or a lick or something. Then I would use that, and then I'll just write my own thing, because I can remember my own thing, and I think it's a lot easier to write your own thing. And so I think people should just start making stuff up and writing their own things based on what they like. But I think personally, I mean, the problem is that everyone learns differently, right? But if your brain works in the same way as mine, then you're much better off just doing your own thing, just kind of going off on a tangent with the thing that you like, and you just do your own thing with it, and then you might discover your own techniques and kind of develop it in an interesting way, and and that's kind of how you make because presumably everyone's style is somewhat built out of what they're naturally good at as well. So hopefully your style will emerge,
Yeah. I mean, the other thing is, this is a really stupid question, which just came in my head as you were talking then. you know, we're all every guitarist, but maybe I imagine it was the same with you. I don't know, but every guitarist, you know, here's how you tune your guitar. You know, the E A D G B E thing. You know, so we all start off at that same point. Is it too mad to suggest that people should you know, transcend that and just come in from any old angle sort of thing, or you know, use different tuners early on?
Yeah, I mean, do whatever. Yeah, I think I find it. I can't play it standard anymore. I've completely forgotten what chords are. Yeah, no, because there's not like I find it. So there's certain things I have found to be quite worthwhile. Like I always thought, like actually, like genuinely going to a teacher for like a month or two to get rid of really nasty habits can help you get quite good from a technical perspective quite fast. But fundamentally speaking, you kind of to get good, you got to be playing stuff that you're interested in, which is often something that most people are interested in what they're writing, right? So just to kind of do that, and yeah, and if you like the sound of open tunings, if you think that's cool, then what is the point of learning standard? If your ultimate goal is to play at open tunings, why do you need to learn standard? Like, what's it doing? You can do just as much in open. It's just play what you want to play. You're not gonna learn if you're not enjoying it, right?
No, and the other thing with that is as well, I suppose, is you know, if you're using an open tuning, then you know by definition you can just hit the guitar and it's going to sound quite nice straight away, and you just add into it, then, aren't you?
No, absolutely. And certainly there's some songs you can write which are very, very, very easy to play and sound great. So if you're like if you're a sort of early guitar, early in your guitar playing career, figuring something out, man, you can whack out a great sounding. You learn to play like Vestapol or something like that. Great sounding song, really, really easy to play. Then that's gonna because even then if you're trying to do something more complicated and you get really annoyed at yourself, just play Vestapol again, cheer yourself right back up. It's great.
Well, Gwen, I know you're heading off now. Good luck with the touring. Really nice to speak to you. I really enjoyed chatting with you, and hopefully you've got a feeling in your heart for us lot in Wales now, and you rekindle the thoughts of Wales.
Yeah, absolutely.